This channel is supported by Truefire. Truefire is an online library.
Enough, you can get the Truefire All Access Pass for as cheap as they ever do it, the $99 thing, so just jump and do that if you're looking for...
So, keeping up with this regular thing where Fender seemed to have put me on some sort of like Make-A-Wish kid list, and this is their latest run of the American Professional. So we're now dealing with a soft case, which I have to say, most of the time going to a gig, a soft case is what I would take. Now, what's the story with this? They basically sent me like a little bit of a list of all of the things that are being released in this new range, and I kind of just picked this one because to me it seemed like the most interesting guitar. Now, this is the American Professional Classic HOTSHOT Telecaster. So, I'm going to show you everything I can about the guitar. First of all, it's not crazy heavy. The reason I chose this was because it was the most sort of different out of the choices. Like, they got Strats, they got Jazzmasters, I think they got normal Teles, but I felt like actually this kind of made sense to me as something that was a bit different, like a Telecaster, the Nashville style sort of arrangement. So this actually has a Coastline 57 Stratocaster pickup in here, Coastline 63 Tele in the neck, oh yeah, and 63 in the bridge. So, yeah, nice colour. Let's see how it sounds, see how it plays. It's called a Modern C, so it's kind of like the player. So I'm going to need to tune this, obviously. what I would say is that where I think that Fender guitars seem to me to have a little bit of an advantage, of course, you're going to get the right headstock and it's going to say Fender on it, which is doing quite a lot of heavy lifting in general. But you also get this thing where I think their pickups to me sound... To me, I've always found, like, for me, like, a Strat is what I like best at home, but it's not necessarily my top pick for, like, live playing. Whereas this, as a Telecaster, and this is like one of the things that I found at home, is maybe with a Telecaster, I miss some of the in-between subtle sounds. Which this has that stuff. Frets feel good and tidy. If there is a criticism, the nut looks to me to be a little on the high side, and there's some slightly sort of like sharper edges there on it. You know, if it was like a really premium sort of feel, you'd expect that to maybe be sort of sanded back a bit. Not the end of the world. That's certainly not a sound you get on a normal Telecaster, right? The first time that I can remember seeing a Nashville Tele and thinking that's a really cool guitar is forever tied to seeing Ben Jones play with the PV Underground live in Chelsea. This might been in like 2015, 2016. I'll check that out. But he was playing this type of guitar into I think a matchless DC-30, and it just sounded incredible. And it kind of made me think, yeah, actually, you know, why shouldn't a Telecaster have a middle pickup? Fender, it's like a little bit dark in here right now, so I'll give you some close-ups of it. I'll film them tomorrow. It feels great in the hand. With Fender, you do pay a premium for the name and stuff like that, so there are definitely other brands that you might want to consider if you're looking purely for bang for buck. But again, like, does it sound like a Fender guitar? Yes. There's no sort of flaws that I could feel in terms of fretwork. It plays well out of the box. It's good, solid. I could take it straight to a gig.
I can see some sort of, oh, that comes off, some sort of black stuff there on there, and you can also see that there's still finish on the edge of these frets, which just gives you some clues about how they're made. The frets must be somewhat prepared for ends before finishing, which is kind of an interesting way of doing things. Generally tidy. I would say this looks sort of roughly the sort of quality even of the Ultralux Vintage, where you can just see, you know, human marks and stuff, which is, you know, to be expected to some extent if there's a human working on a guitar.
You know, it's got some of that stuff like with the Strat. You know, sometimes it's going to be your bridge. Sometimes with this a Tele, it's like the neck that you avoid, but just fantastic, I think. Right, I'll give it a bit of a play for the intro. So the morning after, so I unboxed this last night and the light was running out. I'm very impressed, sort of, I think, with mostly the tone of the thing. And I do think that this Nashville Tele thing is something that I'd like to explore further. The neck shape is not dissimilar to something like a Player or the American Professional that came before, in that it's got a bit more of a modern feel. The American Professional Classic, the American Professional in general is sort of like a bit more of a modern take. It's not as far as Ultra. Then American Vintage is obviously very much, those are like reissue type guitars. I don't know exactly what makes this classic by designation, but it does have like your, instead of a Professional normally would have locking tuners, right? This just has your basics, and maybe some slightly more classic voiced pickups, and maybe your traditional sort of, although those saddles are actually improved, something that I didn't spot in the dark. But you see we've got grooves on these saddles, which I think is actually probably all things considered, quite an important innovation. And it's just going to mean that these bridges and saddles are presumably a little bit more reliable. I really like the sound of these pickups. I think Fender do pickups and sounds incredibly well. Yeah, all in all, a very solid guitar. I think the prices look to be around sort of £1,500. Yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comments. It's like a satin finished neck, not dissimilar to a player or like the other sort of Ultra as well. So yeah, I don't know, let me know your thoughts.